Good day, everyone. Welcome back for the fifth mini video lecture. We are now on topic 4 in your textbook, and today we will be discussing the reduction of biological diversity. So the species and ecosystems are being stressed currently by human urbanization and industrial activities. So we have our building roads, urban sprawl, mining, industrial resource extraction, and deforestation are just some examples. We often don't realize the impact that we're having on our ecosystem and the surrounding species it affects. And I hope that this lecture sort of gives you an idea of the effects that humans have on the landscape. Since we have stressed the environment, we are seeing a decline in biodiversity, and this is resulting decline definitely has an effect on the balance of an ecosystem. So if you look at these graphs here, we can see that we are seeing a decrease in our freshwater resources, our marine life, the amount of forest that is being cut down for either farming purposes or mill purposes. We're seeing a decrease in the total forested areas, and we're also seeing a decrease in vertebrate species as well too. So like our tigers, lions, fish, marine life, that sort of thing. So I'm going to show you land use over time from starting in 1910 to 2020 today. And it's going to focus on the area you guys currently live in. So we can see here we have Chestermere. This is, oh, where's my mouse? There's Calgary right here, but we're mainly focusing on landscape just east of Chestermere here. So this is in 1910. We have our legend at the bottom here. So yellow is grassland, green is forested, blue is water, a pinky red is agriculture, and a purple is urban areas. So we can see that mainly in 1910, there was a large area of grassland and forested areas, and we have our water resources as well. And then 20 years later, we see significant, not significant, but you do see a noticed change in the amount of area that is being used for agricultural purposes. We see a couple of dots show up for urbanization. 30 years later in 1960, more area has been changed from grasslands to agriculture. Our forested areas are going down a little bit here. 1990 is where you definitely see a very significant change of grassland converted to agriculture areas. And you see definitely a more increased urban areas. 2010, again, even more area has been converted. Not as much of a difference between 1990 to 2010, but a few more hectares have been taken over for agriculture purposes. But I think the big difference here is we see a significant increase in urban areas as well. The cities are expanding. And then again, 2020, huge urban areas and agriculture areas. And when we compare them side by side, it's completely two different landscapes. Now, I'm not saying that agriculture is completely bad. We have a huge population and we need to sustain that through our farming practices. However, there are a bunch of species that used to inhabit the grassland areas and unfortunately have either moved or some species probably have died off through loss of habitat or become endangered as well too. And with Calgary being a city that doesn't have many sky rises, it's mainly like homes on their own land. We have quite the urban sprawl problem as well too. If we were to continue increasing our population here, we would probably have to lose areas that are being used for agriculture for urban purposes. But then that means you'd probably have to provide more food. You'd have to take away from grassland or forested areas. It's a very hard scale to balance. Now let's talk about extinction versus extirpation. So extinction is the disappearance of every individual of a species from the entire planet, meaning there's no individual organism of that species left. An example of this being the woolly mammoth. It went extinct right after the Ice Age, mainly from humans overhunting the species. Extirpation is a local extinction or a disappearance of a species from a particular area. So that means that that species can be found somewhere else in the world still, but not within that particular area. So an example being the swift fox, which was extirpated from Canada in 1928, mainly from overhunting and habitat loss. However, we have had efforts to try and reintroduce the swift fox into southern Alberta and Saskatchewan. They're actually keeping the specific location of this project hidden because they don't want people to go to this area to go look at and see and find the swift fox and maybe even hunt it as well. So extinction is a natural part of Earth's history. It's not just like the humans decided to show up and animals decided to die off. In fact, 99% of all the species that have ever existed on the Earth are now extinct, and many of those extinctions were from mass extinctions. So we've seen the extinction of the Western camel, Columbia mammoth, direwolves, the Jefferson's ground sloth, and these ones here are just from animals that used to inhabit North America. They are completely extinct now. The northern white rhino is extinct in the wild, and there's unfortunately only 2 females left in captivity. And then there's the dodo bird, which humans hunted into extinction. So most extinction does take place over long periods of time. However, the main cause for concern right now is that the rate of extinction is rising. So typically the normal rate of extinction for species on a planet is on Earth is 10 to 100 species per year. And the current rate of extinction is unfortunately 20,000 to 30,000 species per year, which is crazy. And if this current rate of species loss continues, we will lose between 30 to 50% of all species on the Earth this century, which is just absolutely ridiculous, especially with the technology and conservation efforts that we are putting forth and the knowledge we have today. It's up to us to try and help slow this rate of extinction down, especially when we are a big part of the loss of species as well. This was a news article from 2018, which stated that 60% of the world's wildlife has been wiped out since 1970, showing how much of the rate of extinction has increased. Another extinction is the Tasmanian tiger. Again, the cause was overhunting, and it's a really cool and unique species as well too. The orangutan population has gone down more than half in the past 18 years. This is an article from 2018. So, and it's mainly from habitat loss and hunting. The habitats of the orangutan are currently being cut down, deforested, and it's also that they could plant palm oil. And palm oil, we use palm oil in pretty much all food. If there's preservatives in the food, you're using palm oil. There's palm oil in your shampoo and conditioner. There's palm oil in your deodorant. It's used in so many different products. So the last major extinction occurred 65 million years ago when a giant asteroid hit the Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs. This is probably one that you guys have heard about the most. There have been actually 5 major extinctions though, but this was the last one. So there are environmental protections set in place by the provincial and federal governments. There's the Species at Risk Act, which protects the nest, den, or shelter of any at-risk classified species. However, that Protection Act does not protect the surrounding habitat of that species that it needs to survive. And so it will only protect the small living area that it currently lives in, but not the surrounding habitat. So if we aren't protecting the habitats, how are we supposed to help these at-risk species? And in Alberta alone, there are at least 41 threatened or endangered animals. One of those is the greater sage grouse. There's only about 39 to 58 adults left in the wild. They're a really cool bird. They do a fun, funky dance with like a little bop move. There's the limber pine and the white bark pine. I added those two trees in there to show that we also classify some vegetation as well under the endangered um, or at-risk species list. And why should we really care? Well, biodiversity is important because it protects the integrity of our ecosystems. And without biodiversity, ecosystems would be more likely to collapse under outside threats. And so the more variability that you have in an area for a species, the more likely that area will thrive under changing circumstances. And that's it for that video. In the next lecture video, we will go over the causes for this decline in species. Thanks for watching, and let us know, please, if you have any questions.